Hi everyone, I'm Matt Andrzejewski and I'll be your instructor this semester for Learning and Conditioning Psych 303. In this video I want to talk about the content of the course, my assumptions regarding the content area of this course, tell you a little bit about the objectives, and a little bit about where I'm coming from. The course itself is going to, and the requirements and expectations of the course are going to be described in another video about the syllabus. So the content of this course, the name is Learning and Conditioning, but I think that those two terms are synonymous. I think conditioning and learning roughly mean the same thing. I would rather call this course Learning and Behavior because I think that more adequately describes what the course is going to be about. It's about what humans and animals do, behavior, and how they come to do that, which I think is learning. But with a caveat that there are some things that we do that we don't learn. There are instinctual behaviors, innate behaviors, especially in the animal kingdom, that are fairly complex that you don't have to learn how to do. So we're going to talk about that. And what we're going to do in the course, one major objective of this course is to classify certain events, certain behaviors as learned and unlearned, certain behaviors as X or Y, and so on and so forth. And that is a basic goal of any scientific endeavor, and that is to identify and classify. Most scientific systems are classification systems. We name things a certain way. They have technical meanings and technical definitions. So in this course, I want you to be able to identify and describe some basic facts and classify and name certain things that humans and animals do. One of those distinctions to start with is we're going to be classifying behavior as learned and unlearned. And we're going to address the question of how do we know it's learned, how do we know it's unlearned, and so on and so forth. A second objective of the class regarding this classification is that we're going to then embed behavior in larger relations to other events in our environment, specifically with respect to time. What comes first, what comes second, what comes third, what we call the temporal relations of particular things. And the directionality of those events, what came first, what comes second, did behavior come first, did behavior come second, is important then in classifying those relationships as one type of thing versus another. So those are going to be keys to this course, and key objectives are this idea of categorization or classification into these various systems. A third objective of this course is to apply those principles or apply those things that we've learned in that classification system to the real world. And it benefits a lot of people by doing this because we can identify problems, we can identify obstacles, and we can remove them or adjust them or change them. We can also apply this system to the behavior of science or scientists because that's what science is. It's what scientists do. We can also apply this to ourselves, what my mentor called a self-interpretive behavior analysis, which is pretty interesting stuff, I think. Behavior, though, is the subject matter of this class, learning and behavior. It's a funny thing, though. It sometimes leaves a mark. If you dig a hole in the ground, you have a hole in the ground. You have a permanent product or semi-permanent product of your behavior sometimes. Sometimes it doesn't. If you wave to your friend across campus, the wave is here and it's gone. It comes and it goes. So behavior is necessarily an action or an activity. It's a verb-like process or verb-like entity, but it's here 1 minute and gone the next. So how is it that we create the permanent products to look at in a scientific way is an interesting question. We're not going to spend a whole lot of time on that, but that's one question to consider. We often refer to the behavioral stream in behavioral science and behavioral psychology, the ebb and flow of behavior, environment, social interchanges, and so on that go on, the stream of behavior, and how causes become effects and effects become causes, and so on and so forth. And it's dynamic and it's extended in time. Learning, we're going to define as a long-term change in behavior as a result of experience. Now, we could argue about this definition until we're blue in the face, and maybe not come to an agreement, but generally speaking, this is what we're going to view learning as. It's not a result of development. There are some behavioral changes that we see as a result of development that are unlearned. And the other thing we have to recognize is that not all complex behavior is a result of learning. So part of what we're going to be doing is studying the methodology to determine what is learned and what is unlearned. I'm going to approach this course from a behavior analytic perspective, which is the theoretical position we known as radical behaviorism. It views behavior as a subject matter, not the mind, not the soul. It's what organisms do. But it also includes things that go on, what we would say, in quotes, within the skin. Okay? And this is the radical notion of radical behaviorism, is it views internal events that we experience as behavior as well. Even though you might not be able to, as an observer, see what's going on inside me, I can feel my heartbeat, or I can feel warm, or I can be enraged. Those we're going to consider as behavior as well. And that's the radical notion of radical behaviorism. So some of the assumptions that I wanted to talk about, just to finish up here, is that I'm going to approach this course from an empirical nature. That means that we're going to be using the methods of science to evaluate certain claims. I'm a pragmatist. That means that a successful working demonstrates some sort of understanding of that process. But I am also a strict physicalist or materialist. That means that I view all behavior and the forces that affect it as physical. I believe in falsifiability, and what that means is that any statement, any explanation must be falsifiable. It must be able to be proven false. And if it's not, if there's no evidence that could prove a statement false, then it's not falsifiable. It's not a scientific statement. It's an opinion, basically. I believe in an observability criteria, but it's loose. Some things we can't see because either our eyes fool us or our sense organs aren't good enough yet. I am a determinist. That means that all effects have causes. And although there's some randomness involved. I also rely heavily on statistics and quantitative analyses in my science, so that's something to be aware of. So those are the basic assumptions of the course, the basic objectives, and where we're coming from. So now it's a good time to look through the syllabus video to make sure you understand what we're going to be doing for this course. Welcome.